afternoon and welcome to this edition of Finweek Money Matters, the show that helps you manage your finances. I'm Dumisho Greater. My co-hosts are Thandi Sizwe, Matlujana, who's the Finweek Deputy Editor, and Jessica Hubbard, the Finweek Journalist. Now on the show today we discuss how you can grow your business through networking. We will also look at our trend for the week and discuss the impact that technology is having on companies. Remember, you can read more about these stories and many others in this week's edition of Finweek that is on the shelves from today. The magazine is also available online in English and Afrikaans via mysubs.co.za. But first, let's take a look at our cover story. In this edition of Finweek, the focus is on the power of networking. It drums the message home that while the world is getting swamped with digital, social and business networking platforms, personal interaction is still the best place for generating great spontaneous ideas. Well, joining us on the desk today, we have Andile Khumalo, who's the founder of My Startup, and Helen Nicholson, who's the Chief Excitement Officer of the networking company. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. I'm going to start with you, Thandi Sizwe. So if you don't network, does that mean that your business is pretty much done for?
Probably not. But it's one of the most important ingredients that you can bring into your business to grow it. I think we're all for the idea that we need entrepreneurship and we need to encourage young people to get into businesses, to be entrepreneurs, to grow the economy and to grow South Africa and to make it a competitive nation in the world. But, you know, there's a sense that there's all these support mechanisms that are available to entrepreneurs, but there's one important thing that so far an entrepreneur has had to do themselves and without any training or guidance, and that's going out there and getting clients. Now, it's not the easiest thing to do. You get into a room, there's guys with black ties and there's big guys and tall guys with big cars, and you're this small guy. You have to introduce yourself, you have to introduce your business. You don't know how to do it, where to start. You have a business card. Should you just give it to them and say, hi, my name is Thandi, here's my business card, give me a call? Yeah. You know, so we felt that we needed to ensure that entrepreneurs understand that networking is a value adder into your business. It's not only a social gathering that it has made out to be known as over the years. I mean, I've attended many networking functions, and trust me, what I've enjoyed is the free beer and an exchange of business cards at the bar, and that's it. Trust me, after that, I don't, you know, you think to yourself, oh my gosh, who was this? And you're like, you know what, just put it there until we find some use for it. So we're trying to now bring it all together and send a message that networking can be used to effectively grow your business, to effectively grow yourself. You know, you have your own personal brand before you have your business. So it's a matter of how do you bring the two together to grow.
I think that point that Thandi Sizwe just made is that's important. In the last 10 years, we've seen the phenomenon of the personal brand, and whether you're a CEO of a listed company or you're a freelancer, your personal brand has become quite important. And I think for that, networking is critical to grow your personal brand.
Helen, let's bring you into our conversation. Chief Excitement Officer, maybe you can offer us some words of advice or some tips. As Thandi Sizwe was saying, you walk in, you don't know what to do. What are the do's and don'ts when it comes to how you conduct yourself at a networking function?
I think there's a couple of points, but when you walk into a room, I think to be authentic is key. Don't try and fake it till you make it. Be who you are. If you're an introvert, be the best introvert that you can be. Then that means connecting with one person meaningfully. You don't have to run around the room kind of air kissing people, swapping business cards, because people have that view of that's what a good networker looks like, which is not necessarily the case. So I always say to people, look for groups of 3 to break into conversations, because when you break into groups of 2, then you're often interrupting them. So you stand next to groups of 3, you overhear what they're chatting about, and it is important because if you've got nothing in common with them, it's pointless to break into the conversation. And then you kind of make your move. But bearing in mind there's a difference between networking and stalking as well. But so when you make your move, then and small talk is an art. And I always say small talk leads to big talk, and you've actually got to get good at it. And the more you read, the more diverse. I always say read Sunday newspapers, etc. that you are not the demographic for, because that enriches the quality of your conversation. conversation.
Are we ever allowed to skip the small talk though? Because
No.
for some people that can be devastatingly boring.
I think it's the ritual in which we engage in as human beings, and I think if you don't do it, immediately kind of you look too aggressive. And as South Africans, our culture is quite reserved from a network. If you compare us to Americans, for example.
Angelia, can you come in and chip in? I saw you smiling away that there's a difference between talking and stalking. I mean, what do you have to say when it comes to...
Particularly like the comment about the egg kisses. I think that was something. No, I agree 100%. I think that this networking thing is a trick. You know, it is a big trick and it's a balance. You know, some people come to networking functions without a real objective. And I think perhaps one of the most important things is there are so many opportunities to network. And as an entrepreneur, you're typically busy. You don't have too much time in your hands. You can't make every single one. You know, what works for me is that I pick the ones that I want to go to. And I kind of go there with an objective of who do I want to meet and why is it that I want to meet them. So you're right, sometimes people can be overbearing. I often get that, and you know, no matter how much you try and coach somebody, if they're too abrasive, too loud, they want to hog you for the whole night, you're trying to see another guy you want to talk to, but this guy's here. So all of that is very uncomfortable space. I think that if you're clear about what you're trying to achieve going into a function, and try and strike the balance, you know, don't be too quiet and timid, but also don't be the guy who just keeps talking and never stops. You know?
I think what came through strongly from this article is the art of listening, which is an essential skill for any business person. And I think it's one we could all get a little bit better at in any situation.
Well, Anila, you work with a lot of entrepreneurs in your organization, My Startup.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine that you go through various lessons as to how these guys are handling networking and how these guys are trying to grasp the concept of networking. What are some of those lessons and how do you ensure that you are able to plug in those gaps?
No, 100%. I think the point that you made earlier around the culture, I often find that there's a big culture issue. So a young entrepreneur will go to a function and maybe, you know, Adrian Gore is there. And he thinks, man, this is the guy who founded Discovery, you know, and he's got a business, maybe an insurance business, and maybe he just wants advice. You know, he doesn't really want a meeting with him. He's not trying to stalk him. It's just seen as maybe disrespectful to go up and say, hi, my name is Andile. I would like to ask you something. You know, so you kind of think, no, these guys are too big. He's a high roller. Who am I to even go and talk to him? So there's a big culture thing that, you know.
So is that how you would approach someone like Adrian Gore? You wouldn't approach him when he's out running around Rosebank in his tackies and, you know. Is there a time and a place for networking, or can you do it anyway?
I think events allow you that because remember, you know, going to a social function, we are all there to socialize. Otherwise, this person shouldn't be here in the first place. If he's not prepared to talk to people that are here, he shouldn't have come. If he's running on the road or he's with his family in a restaurant, you know, you gotta respect that, right? He's there in the restaurant, not trying to talk to you. So the functions definitely provide an opportunity, but specifically on entrepreneurs, I see that gap between I'm a small guy, there's a big guy. And then they all go and huddle on their own. And they say, oh man, did you see Adrian Gore in there? And that confidence and that almost acceptability that I can go and say hi is perhaps a little bit of a culture thing we got to get through.
I also think it comes down to research. I remember coaching a group of young black women entrepreneurs, and one of them wanted to approach Patrice Motsepe. And I said to him, it's about her doing his homework or doing your homework on him, finding out what his hot buttons are. So when you go and speak to him, you don't just come in cold. You know what projects he's involved in, so you know how your business can kind of fit in. Because then it looks like you've actually, you've approached this strategically versus kind of spray and pray networking.
You know, I've had my fair share of miss and hits when it comes to starting a business and going out there networking.
Yeah.
And I used to be so excited about exchanging a business card. I'd come home and think, damn, I've done it. I've got this guy's business card. And I used to think that's enough.
Yeah.
But is it? What is it that you
Frankly,
can
it's
take
not.
beyond that?
I'll tell you that. I don't know if you guys remember when cell phones, I shouldn't say came out, but when it was not popular for an important person to give out their cell phone numbers. You remember that? So you get a card, which is an address and a landline, and an email, which basically meant don't call me my cell phone. I think more and more now, business people give up their cell phone numbers. But now you're sitting with the responsibility of calling the guy on his cell phone, because you already know that's a little bit of a personal thing to do. So the business card thing, yes, it's nice to have the details. What I often find works is think through what problem of his can you help him solve?
Andile and Helen, we're going to have to leave it at that for today. The time has just flown by, but I think we've gotten some very valuable lessons on what not to do. Don't stalk people, I think, is probably the one that I've got from now. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. That was Andile Khumalo, who's the founder of the My Startup Initiative, and Helen Nicholson, who's the Chief Excitement Officer of the Networking Companies. Time now for Befriend the Trend. Well, the trend for this week is faster reading could be what can get you ahead of the game. I'm going to bring you guys into this. I mean, is this another fad that we're seeing? I've seen the new app that's come out called Spitz. It's a US app. Is this another fad?
I think it's an interesting technology because it's based on positioning a word in a way that allows you to read it more quickly. But ultimately it comes down to your personal cognitive abilities as to how quickly you can get through an article or an academic paper. So I think in certain cases it will have its uses if you're reading through lengthy legal documents. But if you're in the bath and reading your novel, I just think you want to get your enjoyment and read it in your own time.
I mean, I think that I was just thinking about it this morning when I was watching the Oscar trial court case, and I saw these reams of paper and huge piles of files, and I thought, who sits day and night to go through these files? And I thought, if you had this spritzing technology, you could probably go through those in half the time or even less the time. So I think in terms of the types of problems that it will solve if it does come on stream, because you must remember South Africa is a slow taker when it comes to technology. It probably will get to us maybe 3 years or 5 years, but it's likely that it can have some take up, which, you know, in South Africa we normally do this. We take things and then we realize, it's just one of those, and then down it goes.
I have a problem with this though, because fast reading is one thing, but are you going to be able to comprehend what's being said?
I think, again, it just comes down to the individual's cognitive abilities and given South Africa's very low literacy rate and our poor reading culture in general, I think we have a far way to go, and we need to rather take our time and process stuff.
It's probably not a technology you want to give to your grade 12 son or daughter to read a Shakespeare book. But I think it is something it's something fun to play with if you're reading your own fun stuff for your own, recreational feeling.
And whatever encourages people to read more, then the better.
Right, we'll leave it at that for this week's trend. Time now to pay the bills, but we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Finweek Money Matters. While many of us have become fixated on the way technology has transformed our personal lives, the impact that technology is having on companies is just as exceptional. While we look at how IT has indeed become a vital business enabler and how it has attracted the much needed attention of the C-suite. Joining us at the desk is Christo Breedenhan, who's a regional director at Riverbed Technology, and Suren Govender, who's the managing director at Infrastructure at Accenture South Africa. Gentlemen, thank you for making the time to join us. Christo, I'm going to start with you. Okay. C-suite, what is that? C-suite, they mentioned the climb to the C-suite when it comes to the role of the Chief Information Officer.
Okay, I think if you look at the role of a Chief Information Officer, we are seeing a massive change in IT. And especially if you look at the last 5 years and you see how things has changed so fastly and so in massive trends over the last 5 years, things like social media, the cloud computing, and I can continue about all these new technologies that are happening and changing the way IT work. Now, the effect on this for an IT environment is if you look from a CIO, he needs to say, where am I going to spend my money? What am I going to do? What is the effect of big IT on my business? What is the effect of social media on my business? Because all these things have an influence. For example, if you look at the customer, whether you look at within your own organization, within your IT environment, these things has an effect. And what the typical end user might do is say, you know what, IT, if you don't change my way I'm doing my thing, then I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to start doing my own thing, my own IT and own business environment.
So, Shirin, is it safe to say that chief executive officers never used to consider IT as something that deserved a huge budget allocation or something that's key to business, but now they are?
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction to make. In fact, we often talk about the role or the role of the emerging CIO, and like, let's put the I back into CIO, because that's really what is at it's almost the lifeblood of an organization, information and data. And the role of the CIO, or even having a seat at the C-suite or at the board table, we're seeing a trend of that increasing. Now, I think merged with that concept is that IT strategy, which was very, very different from typical business strategy, and business strategy today are actually very close. In fact, we cannot talk about them separately anymore because of the transformative nature of technology on modern business. And the way to actually operate in a high-performing environment is that we need to leverage technology to a far larger degree.
Are there any sort of results, maybe anecdotally, that we are seeing this have an effect on how businesses are run these days?
Absolutely. So we annually conduct research called High Performance IT, where we survey CIOs to understand, and this is over, from an ongoing trend perspective, who are those high performers and what differentiates them between, let's say, the rest of us or the average performers. And we do find that aside from them doing strategically different things, the things that they focus on or the gaps that are created are significant. It's not a little 2 or 3%.
Yeah, just to bring Krista in there, you recently were involved in a study where you identified transformers. Can you explain what transformers are and how you identified them?
Sure. Riverbed with Loudhouse conduct a interview with about 1,000 plus companies in EMEA, in countries like Germany, the UK, even here in South Africa. And what this entire thing was to go to a lot of the larger corporates with 1,000 and more people working in the corporate. And what they've identified is that only 25 of all these massive big corporates are what we see a transforming company. Now, if you look at what is a transforming company, is typical a company that sees the benefit of high performance. Instead of having lots of equipment at branch office level and lots of slow performance applications, to be a high performance company that really sees the top benefit and out of your environment.
Can you give us any local examples of companies who you would classify